It might be good to sort of ask about your background, because you're a founder and member of a filmmaking collective called Court 13. By definition, you call yourself a filmmaking army, and I found on the website of Court 13, I found a very nice sort of self-definition that I would want to read out briefly. Court 13 is a collective of madcap artists and animators of junk that seek to tell huge stories out of small parts. So my question is, what is Court 13? How did it all come about? How do you live and work together?
Sure, yeah, so it it started. The boring thing is, like, it started making a film in a squash court at my university. We, well, I guess there's so we're trying to tell this huge story. It was like we're trying to make Moby Dick with no money, and so we were animating it out of meat and junk and garbage, and we were illegally shooting it in the basement of my college, and then we got busted by the fire department, who said it was the worst fire hazard they'd ever seen in their life because our set was all made of insulation foam, and we were using torches, and it was totally carcinogenic. And so they evicted me from my house, and so I moved into a squash court that was abandoned on the other side of campus, which was Court 13, and so that became my address. And then basically it referred to all the people that were coming in there. It was, it was a senior film, so I was supposed to shoot it for 2 weeks, but I just kind of kidnapped the camera and held it for about 4.5 months, and it just became this 24-hour thing where people were showing up, and some of them would be working on the film, but other people would just be painting their own paintings in the corner or making something completely different. But it just became a place where all these people who wanted to make art in this very kind of wild and scrappy way knew where to go, and they knew that I would be sleeping there, or I would always be there, and there'd always be, a bottle of whiskey somewhere. And so that was kind of it was just kind of a lifestyle. And then that kind of, then we started to sort of define it when we all kind of reconvened in New Orleans to make this short film that preceded this one called Glory at Sea. And it's become, it's not like a production company. It's more like, I think about it like, we're like the Ninja Turtles, or like the Wu-Tang Clan. It's like some sort of definition of, it's a bunch of artists that all do different things. We're not all filmmakers, but we kind of come together around the films, and it's a code of sorts. It's a sort of, it's a way that we go about things where the way that we do everything is very immersive. So if you want to make a scene about a boat on the water, you don't figure out how to fake that. You figure out how to build the boat, and you figure out how to sail it, and you do it, and so that becomes kind of that's kind of the guiding principle, is building everything very organically and very, and trying to experience the story that you're trying to tell in the making of the piece.
And you still sort of all live and work together ever since, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's very loose. It scatters and it comes back together. It's sort of centered in New Orleans, and there's probably a core group of about 10 of us or so that live there full time. But then the crew on Beast, ballooned up to 93 people at one point, which was not the plan. It just, everybody starts calling their brothers and sisters, and their brothers and sisters start calling their friends, and you end up with 90 crazy people in South Louisiana. So it's always shrinking and expanding, and every once in a while someone's like, I can't do this anymore. I need to go get a job. So it's not like a club. It's just sort of it's something that happens around these films.
Sounds like a film made by a flash mob or something. But
It is at moments. I'm probably making it sound a little more like a nonstop party than it is, because it is, you're still making a film. It's a work-based experience, but it is it is sort of filmmaking by brute force as opposed to, and like mass brute force, as opposed to a kind of careful, sculpting of it's not an exact science, it's more about an energy and a momentum that gets created when you have 93 people who don't know what they're doing, try and make a movie. That's sort of what it's like.
And why do you call it an army? Is that a secret meaning behind that, or is it just...
No, I mean, I think we're just trying to find a word that means a whole lot of people. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure army is the right word. We certainly aren't like a military ideology, but it's certainly it's a gang of sorts. It's like it's a mass of people, and it's very kind of, it's like the cause. It's like this idea, that you go into making a film for a very good reason, and then you're devoted, sort of blindly devoted to that cause, so there's something kind of, about the soldiers attacking, it's about charge. I think what we think of is one of my favorite expressions is charge into it, the sort of like we're going over the trenches and running blindly into the abyss. That resonates to me, which sort of makes me think about, an army coming over the trenches or something. So, but I don't know. We certainly aren't an army, actually.
So you actually live what every Hollywood star and every interview always tells me, that film is a collective art and so on. But still, to go back to the sort of to the nucleus now, to specifically for Beasts of the Southern Wild, how on earth did you come up with the idea behind it all? How did it all start?
It was a lot of ideas that were swirling around, and then it was a couple phone calls that I got from powerful people that asked me, did I have a script? And I said, I always think of the scene in Ghostbusters where the creature asks them, "Are you a god?" And the guy says no, and then he blows them up, and then Bill Murray says to Dan Aykroyd, when someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes. And so a couple people called me and said, do you have a script? And I was like, yes, I have a script, which I didn't. And
they called you based on their short film?
On my short film. And it was both the people who financed the film and the Sundance Labs who kind of supported the film being made. And but what I had was I was really working on two films at the same time. One was a short film adaptation of my friend's play, which was about a little girl and her father and him getting sick, and that sickness kind of turning into the end of the world. The way that when you're that young, your perception of the world is so connected to your parents, and when something stable starts to fall apart, that kind of spills out. So I was working on that, and then I was also working on a feature film about sort of the bathtub, this idea of a place full of holdouts that was very much inspired by where I was living in Louisiana and a lot of my friends down there. And under the pressure of that sort of, I have to write something right now, the two ideas, it suddenly clicked to me that the two ideas were about the same thing. They're both, about losing the thing that made you. A little girl losing her parent and a community losing its place has this there was like an emotional connection between those two things. And so in that moment of panic, it was like, okay, I'll take everything I like from this play and I'll transfer it into this world that I'm thinking of and try to write a story. And I wrote this completely crazy script that is nothing like this movie, but it got that boulder rolling, which ended up turning into the film.
So you basically wrote a screenplay fusing the two ideas, the play by your friend Lucy Alibar, that's her name, right?
Yeah.
And your own idea for a feature film.
And then we got into the labs, and then she came on as the co-writer of the screenplay, and then we sort of threw that document into a fireplace and started again. But but started with that connection and sort of those building blocks in place.
Did you always have a very clear-cut artistic vision of what the final film was going to be like, or did you sort of assemble this while you were going along?
No, I mean Well, I think we got to a clear idea eventually, but it was a long process and it evolved massively. But that was kind of by design. Like I think the idea that was clear was how we were gonna approach making this film, which was, this very intensely collaborative idea that, artists would own their sets, and own their props, that actors would own their characters, that the place where we shot would speak for itself, and that we were going to find a way to kind of take this fable that we started with and then run it through people and places and a reality that would then become the script. So if you were to look at that initial script that I wrote, it was a straight up comedy. It was there were like cows being catapulted through people's houses by gangs of lunatic children. I mean, things that have nothing to do with this film. And then the process was sort of finding the place and then saying, okay, what's actually, finding this very inspiring place in South Louisiana and saying, as much as I love the cow catapult, there are no cow catapults here, so we have to cut that, and sort of disciplining the script and the ideas to people and places and letting that reality infuse itself into this fantastical story that was written. And so that evolution was kind of part of the writing process. And by the time we got up to production, we had a script that reflected that, so I would say it got clear, but the process was, it wasn't like, I always think about it, you have like a gigantic ball of clay and then you are looking for, that the story's in there somewhere because you feel that it's in there somewhere, but it's a sculpting process and a whittling process, and eventually you see it inside of there, but it's not like something that you build perfectly the first time you go at it.
Speaking of cows, are you a fan of Monty Python, or where does that come from?
Yeah, definitely. Now that I think about it, right? Yeah,
that's
probably where that came from. Yeah. No, but I love Monty Python. Yeah.
One thing I wondered, yeah, that's what critics do while watching the movie. They think about how on earth was he able to finance that. This is this kind of movie that I wonder about questions like that. You already talked about the Sundance Lab and stuff, but are you saying that you sort of got your early screenplay financed for a movie that didn't look at all?
Yeah, I didn't show the financiers that screenplay. They definitely didn't read that. No.
But how do you get money for this kind of project?
Well, it's a credit to the people who finance this film. They're the bravest, and they're very much. We just kind of found a perfect partnership. These guys, they saw my short film. They were the other people who called me and said, what are you doing next? Do you have a script? And you say yes, what we told them, and the fact that they went. Also you got to understand, like, we have no experience at all. Like I had never been to Los Angeles. I had never pitched anything. I didn't know anything about how this worked, and so I think they were probably sort of like, what are these guys? Because they called us and I think we said, we really can't explain it to you on the phone. But you should come to New Orleans and we'll be able to explain it if you come down here. And they must have just thought we were crazy, but they probably wanted to come to New Orleans anyway. So they flew down. These two guys that run this company, they're younger than me. They've never financed a feature before. They run this organization that's a nonprofit that basically was giving grants to social issue documentaries and things like that. But they wanted to make a move into making feature films, and they're a nonprofit, which also was a big part of it. But basically they came to New Orleans. We went to a bar. We stayed there for like 6 hours, not really explaining the story, but just talking about these ideas about filmmaking, saying how the short was gonna, they loved this short, and we were really trying to figure out how to take this crazy form of filmmaking we invented for the short and bring it to a feature. And we talked a lot about what the feeling was gonna be, what the themes were gonna be. But it wasn't one of these pitch sessions that I've learned about since, where you have to say in one sentence what your film is about, or say that it's a combination of, A League of Their Own and Hellraiser or something. we got to really talk about the film as like in the way that it inspired us. You know, like this is this idea. These are these people that are are fighting for their homes and refusing to leave, and we're going to tell this epic where these are the heroes, where there's this little girl who is saving her, and we just went on and on and on like you're not supposed to do with your financiers. But we were having such a good time. There was probably great stuff on the jukebox, and I think both sides of it just felt like, we want to go on this adventure. We want to. And because they're a nonprofit, which is totally, I don't know any other example of a film that's been financed like that. They don't have that. They don't have that box office issue that you have when you finance films, where most of the time you talk to someone, they say, "Well, we need a star so we can guarantee this box office. We need a genre so we can guarantee this audience." They don't have any of that. It's for them. It was just purely about the same thing it is for us, which is just changing the paradigm, trying to make a different type of film, trying to tell a story that means something. And so all those, they were just right in line with us in that way, and they didn't have any fear of losing money or something like that. It was they were really just brave and wild also. So that just happened, and that was a miracle.
Miracle, which means that it's very hard to draw lessons from it or give any advice based on your experience for other filmmakers, right?
Yeah, there's no strategy involved, But I mean, I will say, I mean, because I've been asked sort of about advice before, and I will say that one thing that we've always had that's always worked out, and it's terrible advice actually, is that we've always, and this is part of sort of the Core 13, we've always proceeded forward at all times. It's like there's never been a moment where we've sort of stopped and said, okay, here's idea for the film, let's look for the money, and then when we find the money, we'll make the film. It's always been, we are going to make this under any circumstances. If we have to sell everything we own and take out debts, which is what we did on the short, we're not going to stop working and wait for financing to come along. We're just going to make this film. And that momentum, I think, served us very well, because I think that, I think you can really get into a position as a filmmaker where you feel like you have no power, but you can always make your film. There's always, the first film I made, it was this huge story. I was making it at college. There was no way to actually shoot it, so I learned how to animate, and I animated it. And I still told the story, And so I think that mentality served us very well. And I think I read something in a Herzog book or something that just said, always proceed forward with absolute certainty, and money will follow your momentum. And I think I took that to heart, and probably our whole crew did too, that, nothing's going to stop us. And so, for people coming in who have money to finance the film, it's more, they're like, okay, I want to be a part of this. These guys are going to do it with or without me, so we better get on board now, and if we want to be a part of the adventure. So I think that helped us, and also just the fact that the short wasn't, the short was totally its own. The short wasn't like a leverage mechanism or a calling card film. It was its own story that we wanted to tell for its own sake. And I think that too, you don't end up in that negotiation of trying to be like, okay, here was my springboard to this feature. It's just sort of like we were just making movies, and we were going to do it no matter what. And I think that helped us finance the film.
Can you talk a little bit about the help you got from the Sundance Lab? Because the reason I'm asking is that I sometimes get the impression that many films that have been through this kind of development lab, that you sort of think somehow they feel streamlined by too many script consulting sessions and stuff like that. So I wondered, how did this happen, and what kind of help you got from there? How did it affect or influence the project?
Yeah, I think for us, I know what you're talking about with the labs. Like they do have, if they get used wrong, they have a they have the ability to kind of homogenize the films that come out of there. But for us, we were so inexperienced, and the script was so bad and so raw when it got there, that no one knew what to make of it. And so we really, it was incredibly helpful for us because, organizing that massive ideas was not something that I really knew how to do, and I didn't have any experience. And there's amazing teachers there. The people who go there to teach are so brilliant and understand the medium so well. And so for us, it really, it took us from like way out here to something where I understood the story. I mean, the whole process there, the way it's intended is, it's very much like a self-examination. There's no one kind of telling you what to write or how you should structure something. They're really asking you why you wrote what you wrote, and if you can't explain that, then you're in trouble, but they really push you. It's like some sort of hazing exercise. They really destroy your pride and your sense of self and completely crush you, because they're so smart. And I think for some scripts, like, people just get, especially when they come in there with something they've been working on for 10 years, you can get kind of crushed and then just sort of say, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just going to try to take all the advice I can. And I think that's kind of the wrong way to use it. But for us, it was, we're pretty stubborn, and we had a pretty clear idea of what kind of film we wanted to make, and it just was a way that helped us organize, just be a better storyteller and really discipline ourselves as to what was going to be in the film, that it was going to be about something, and I think I discovered what the film was about through this sort of psychoanalysis process you go through when you go to the lab, where, someone's asking you, like, why is this cow flying through the air? You're saying, oh, because it's awesome. And they're like, well, why is it awesome? Why do you think that's awesome? You're like, I think it's funny. And then it's like, okay, actually this, and they'll reference you back. They'll say, well, you told me this film is about, holding on to something that's crumbling. It's about holding on to your home. How does this relate? And you can't figure it out. And then you discipline yourself to cut that stuff, and you start to find ideas that emerge from, you find ideas that emerge from the story and from the heart of the film, as opposed to trying to organize a bunch of cool pictures that you've thought of to fit them into a film. It's sort of reversed the way that I was thinking of the film, and in a way that really helped it.
So they give you a lot of leeway what you want to do, but you need to know very clearly why you want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And who you are, which is the really hard thing. That's the really, the why you want to do it is like, oh, because the story is about this. And then they get into, why do you want to tell this story? Especially for my story, which is so far away from my life, it took a lot of thinking to actually figure out where this comes from inside of myself, and that the choices had heart as well as just logic, and so they go there too. And yeah, it's tough, but it's really, really good discipline for making art.
Now, let's talk about the next stage in production. And I think I remember from our interview in Cannes that once you got into casting the movie, the whole project took a whole different shape once again. Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah,
I mean, and that goes to the sort of the process of, really allowing the actors to take over their characters. The whole time, and we're writing the script all through casting. So, I mean, that was another great thing that our financiers allowed us to do, is that there was endless revisions right up until we shot the film. And so what that allowed us to do is, as I was writing the film, we were auditioning children for the Hush Puppies role the whole time, and that was like 9 months. And so originally I had a character that was 11 years old written, but just going to these auditions, I saw that the 11-year-old kids weren't thinking in the way that the character thought, and I realized that the age had to come down. And so we started looking at younger and younger kids, and still until we realized, this character isn't 11, she's 6. And then you start rewriting the film based on a 6-year-old's experience as opposed to 11-year-old's experience. And then at the point where we actually find the characters, we go through a whole process of doing, before they ever see a script or anything like that, we do a few weeks of interviews where we just get to know each other, everything we've ever done, everything we, just talking about the ideas in the film and how we think about them, and then all that information gets then written into the script, and then that's the script that they see first. So hopefully that script kind of relates to them in a way that the original one didn't. And then there's another whole process of rewriting those scenes in collaboration with the actors, saying, how would you say this? What would you do in this situation? And trying to guide it so that it doesn't, so that it remains the story and it stays, my movie and then Lucy's movie, but allowing the logic and experience of the people in the film to really take over the characters and hopefully, make a more, I always, I love that in the film, the Hush Puppy and Wink are so different from their characters they play. They couldn't be more different people, but there's something in the spirit of both characters that's very true to the people that wasn't necessarily what we wrote initially. And I think that connection that you feel, that the person you're watching on screen is a real person, it really gives you, it just creates something that I think is pretty hard to replace. And we actually tried to cast professional actors in the film and couldn't do it just because we couldn't get that same kind of intangible connection to work with professional actors. And so, not that, so it was never like a dogmatic thing that everybody had to be non-professional, but the type of process we were using to create the characters, it's not that the actors were so much better, it's that the characters weren't as rich, because the actors wanted to know, the actors are asking me about the character. They're constantly saying, okay, what's this character's backstory like? What are his parents like? What are his experiences? And either because I'm not good enough, or it's just not the way that I think, I had a lot of trouble doing that. And then when we found these people, I got to ask them those questions, and they got to give me that information. And so they almost taught me who the characters were and how to direct them. And that was something that I really needed to create good characters, I think. And so, and then all that happens in pre-production, and then that script that comes out of that gets shot, essentially. But that one important thing is that improvisation doesn't happen during the shoot. The shoot is utter madness, so there's no kind of sitting around and discussing, having quiet conversations over donuts. It's all, but it's giving yourself enough time in that pre-production phase to really let the script evolve into something that feels accurate, not just to you, but to the actors and to the crew and all that kind of stuff.
Now, let me give you another quote from your profile from the Court 13 website. It says that we make films about communities as a community. This phrase "about communities." Can you talk a little bit about how this relates specifically to Beasts of the Southern Wild?
Yeah, the film is literally about this kind of renegade community that lives off the grid, and this is sort of one of the things that I discovered in the labs of why I keep on writing stories about these communities of people that live, off the grid and that take on these impossible challenges, is that it's very much a reflection of how we make the films, and part of the idea going into the work is that the people who we choose to work on the films, the people who come down, it's really like a family that gets created through making the films. It's not people who are hired, this person's worked on these 5 films, great, let's hire them to be a production designer. That production designer is my sister, and it's like, she's got to learn how to do this. And so you create this, you hopefully just create a team that can accomplish something that's way bigger than any individual or disconnected individuals. And it's through, this momentum of this giant force that you get past your limitations, that you would have if you were on your own. So, and then the stories in the films, I think, are very much inspired by that as well. It's something that I believe in, that, by people holding on to each other, you can survive things that you shouldn't be able to survive, and you can do things that you shouldn't be able to do. And so I think the stories reflect that kind of experience that we've had making the shorts, and then making this one as well.
You said before that the shoot was actually complete madness or something like that. Please stop me if it gets annoying, but I've got another quote from your Court 13 mission statement, where it says that tales spring from groups of real people on the margins, and adaptation to screen demands that we live the extremes of the story, not just tell about them. And then each film poses huge, painstaking challenges that defy the gods, nature, and just plain common sense. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of extremes you lived through while shooting beasts, and at what point you defied the gods?
I don't know that I wrote that line. I'm gonna have to talk to defying the gods is maybe a little extreme. Although on the short, I would say that was true, actually. Beast was more under control. But it's extreme situation. I mean, it's extreme conditions to be in, whether or not you're shooting a film, and shooting a film at the same time makes that more extreme, and it's just, I mean, being on a boat built out of a truck bed, which is not really, it looks like it's a functional boat in the movie, but that thing was completely out of control. And you'd get in situations where, the current was moving so fast that boat was going to get swept like deep out into the Gulf, and you've got, your 6-year-old actress on board. And it's 110-degree heat, and you're not in a place where people live. You're in when you get past the bottom of Louisiana, I can't begin to describe how viscerally you feel the end of human civilization and the beginning of insect civilization. You're totally swarmed by plagues. I mean, I think that maybe when we're talking about the gods, it's the feeling of each day you wake up and there's a completely different insect you've never seen before that bites you and sucks your blood in a completely new way. And then you get in those situations, and the current starts moving too fast, the wind starts blowing too hard, you can't shoot, and you have guys on our team would come up with these things where they would take these giant spears and shove them down into the dive down, shove them into the mud below the boats, and create these underwater rigs with ropes. And so there's like guys holding their breath underwater, pulling. It looks like the boat's just drifting down the canal or something, but it's like 7 dudes holding their breath underwater, yanking this thing, trying to get it to happen. And those conditions are the conditions that the characters are in, is the point. It's the point is that you feel in the shot somehow that the experience that you're watching the characters go through, and you feel the sweat, and you feel the bug bites, and you feel kind of just how much muscle it requires to get that shot, even if you're not thinking. Hopefully, you're not thinking about that, but you're just feeling that, in the texture, and it's just an important. For me, it's the fun. It's fun. I would never bitch about that. Like those are the things that you remember. Those are the days that form. People do that and then they marry each other. You know what I mean? Like we have people meet each other in the crew and then they get married because they've been through some sort of harrowing experience. And so you remember those things and they're great. And then, they also, it's also I think a lot about. Film to me is like very young, and I think a lot of times, people don't think about the way that you attack the instrument in a way. It's like what kind of paintbrush do you use? What kind of instrument do you play? How hard are you hitting the strings on the guitar? It's like the actual method with which you're striking your tool, and you want the way you strike the tool to reflect the story. You want it all to feel coherent. And so I feel like a lot of times you see films that are about something incredibly grueling, but there's nothing grueling about the way that they're shot, and so you feel a disconnect between the aesthetics and the content. And so we're trying to get as close to unifying those things as we can without dying, basically.
Was insurance an issue at all on the set, or
Yeah, no, we were.
You were insured.
We were very, very far away from the insurance office, though, I would say. I mean, we were just, we're way off the grid. I mean, no one goes to this part of the world who doesn't live there and know it. And I mean, that's part of the fun too. It's just getting way out there and getting, getting to go to a place that you would never get to go to. And that also kind of insulates you from, but it's not, no one's ever gotten hurt. Somebody stepped on a nail once, but it's, I'm probably making it sound more, we're trying to create the feeling of recklessness, and we're trying to do things in a way that's as close to what's happening as possible. But we have lifeguards, we have, there's always, it's not just her in the boat, there's somebody protecting her who's hiding in the bottom of the boat, there's pyrotechnics experts, we're not actually just setting off bombs, in the middle of groups of children. It's actually very controlled. But the point is to get within the confines of safety. It's to get closer than not to take the safest possible route to shooting a scene, or the most controlled possible route to shooting a scene. It's to create a scene that has its own, that is out of control. Like, it has a chaos to it that you have to chase, within the confines of nobody getting hurt.
You were talking about instruments before. Can you talk a little bit about the music? Because I think you told me in Cannes that deep in your heart, you're probably what you're most is a musician or something like that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And you also wrote and played part of the music in the film, or you rewrote the whole score, or?
Well, I co-wrote it. I wrote a lot. I basically write the sort of hooks and the themes and the chords, and some of them. I come in with, as I'm editing. A lot of times, what I do in the edit room is I have a keyboard plugged into, a MIDI keyboard plugged into like an orchestra, program. And as the film is being edited, I'm trying to score so that we immediately have music to put into the scene, like as we're cutting the film. And so by the end of that, when we get close to picture lock, I have 30 different themes or musical ideas, and then I take that into my friend's basement where we orchestrate and turn that into a real film score. But yeah, no, I sort of, when I was in high school, I was in a band, and sort of songwriting was my favorite thing to do, and it does kind of come more naturally to me, as far as, when I'm making a film, like I can't, I feel like there are some, you watch like a Coen Brothers movie and you get the sense that those guys can literally see that entire shot to shot. They can see the whole thing before they do it. And that's sort of how I feel with music, is I can really sit in a dark room and just see it. To make a film for me is much more this process I'm talking about, where I need all this help and I need all these collaborators, and it's about how I can sort of build a story from pieces that exist in the world, whereas music I can kind of just synthesize on my own. So I guess that's what I meant, is that, and I think the films kind of work as, structurally, I probably think more about music when I think about structure than I do about, Robert McKee or something. I'm thinking much more about how musical pieces build, and how, like, I think about, as I write the film, I'm like, okay, people talk about a storyline, but I think about it as a theme, and then how does that theme, it's got to be in the same chord structure as this theme, but it's got to be at a different rhythm, and and sort of I think a lot in those terms. So I think the films emerge from kind of a musical place.
Now, before we open up the discussion, I'd like to give you 3 names of people that you've mentioned as influences in previous interviews, and if it's okay with you, I just drop the names and you say what you want to say, or maybe it's just bullshit, or you want to pass, or whatever. First of all, Terrence Malick. Obvious.
Really
course,
tired of talking about Terrence Malick, yeah, people bring him up a lot. I mean, I think that the key thing for Malick is the voiceover and the type of voiceover. Hush Puppy. As we were conceiving this character, she doesn't have any friends who aren't animals. Her dad doesn't talk to her. She doesn't have a way, and she's the whole movie. So what I love about the Malick voiceover is it really allows you to sort of step inside the head of the character, not just in a way that it relates to the story. It's not, and to me, I love his voiceovers because they kind of reflect the way that I experience things. I may be just sitting in a chair holding a microphone, but I might be thinking about something cosmic, and that that ability to sort of understand the way that she's interpreting the world was really important. And so having that type of voiceover that can step in and track what's going on in her head at moments where you really need to know her, not what's happening or what she's feeling, but her interpretation of the universe at any given moment. I think certainly comes from his voiceover tradition. So that's probably the thing that most inspired by as it relates to this film.
Then John Cassavetes.
Yeah, he's my favorite. He's the one that I watch and I feel like I just need to quit making films and hang my head for the rest of my life because, and it's about his performances, and we really looked at, like, our method with the actors is very much based on the way that he drew out those performances, the way that those performances were workshopped, the method of kind of taking improvisation, the type of improvisation he describes, like emotional improvisation, where it's not about making up the words. I mean that was an interesting thing too, because one of the things with non-professionals is that they're not trained to learn scripts and memorize massive blocks of text. So it was never about improvising that. It was about learning the scenes really well and using emotional improvisation, not telling them what they're going to feel in a situation, but just sort of developing the way the characters listen into each other, the way they react to each other, and then altering the circumstances around them so that you keep on getting fresh emotional reactions. So, we would do 3 takes with one set of emotions, and then because you have non-professionals, like, it just starts to wear itself out. They've repeated themselves, so you change those emotional circumstances and you get a new reaction, and so that type of acting was something that we really aspired towards, to sort of take those types of characters that feel 1,000 times more real than any character in any film that's ever existed, but then place them inside of a more narrative world, a more narrative context.
And finally, Emir Kusturica.
Yeah, and to me, he's the one that's come the closest to doing that, I guess. And so I think overall, probably he's the biggest influence on the film.
On this one,
on this film, just because his characters have this naturalism and this reality to them, but they're not just. It's not just like a movie. What you think of as a realism film, just a bunch of events or totally objective naturalism. Like, he sort of does a realism that slips into the mystic and slips into a more lyrical sort of form, and then also just his. You watch those films and you feel the wildness of that community that made those films. You sense the party that exists when the cameras go off on screen. And so for me, that watching Underground, I remember, was the moment where I really decided that this is what I wanted to do, is make films, because it felt like this is a way to actually design and create my own reality, populate it with people that I want to be with, and tell these stories at the same time.
Well, thank you. Now, I'm sure you have lots and lots of more questions. There's an interview. There's a microphone back there, so put your hands up if you want to.
I have a question concerning your community. After you had this great success with the movie, did that change something in the community, or is it like you don't see it so often, so you don't get the reaction, really, your personal reactions from then, or?
Are you talking about the community, the Court 13 community, or the community where we made the film?
Well, your community, the 13.
The Court 13,
yeah.
It's going to be interesting when we come back together. It's because we finished the film. We stopped shooting the film 2.5 years ago. We all reconvened at Sundance and had this great reunion, and then it'll be interesting when we all get back together to make another film. It's gonna be interesting. Like I said, this the community was sort of based on and fed from just being completely off the grid, and obviously that's not really the case anymore. But we've been working very hard at, as we move forward into setting up the next project, our whole mantra has been to set up a system where we can keep it intact. I've had to learn about lawyers and contracts and like all this stuff that exists that we never totally had to deal with before. But we're trying to set up a system with the people who are going to finance the next film where we have control over our cast, we have control over our crew, where we can sort of keep the same team intact for the next film. So, that's definitely something that we're very conscious of protecting, and not, and it never would work, it wouldn't work with trailers and honey wagons and like the whole massive infrastructure that exists around a normal film. Like the way that we did this is we're all living in this abandoned gas station and trailers and living in sets that are built, and we know that we need to keep that's part of what makes the films work. And so we're trying to design a system where we can still do that. Yeah, I don't know. It changes every time we make a film, so it'll just be it'll be a new challenge to kind of create this new world within the context of having a lot more eyes on what we're doing.
Can I have just? You probably get lots of offers now, scripts from around the world. How do you deal with that? If you want to keep this kind of filmmaking, do you just say no, or do you think about, okay, maybe I do something that I like?
No, it's just say no. It's just like drugs, right? Yeah, I don't know. It just like it doesn't feel. Obviously, it's a crazy thing to have happen to have the film be this widely exposed. But there was like a pre-existing plan that predated that we were going to do, whether or not anybody watched this movie. I have like 7 films I want to make. The only thing that changed was instead of, I assumed that this was going to be a disaster and I should make the simplest, cheapest, take a mini DV camera and just make a quick film. That was what I assumed I was going to do next. But the only difference is that now that the film's been successful, we can jump to like the top of the most difficult, most impossible to make film on that list and try to do that one. So that's really the only thing that changed, is which film I'm going after next. But yeah, no, I really, I never wanted to. I always loved movies my entire life, but I never was attracted to working in the industry. It just didn't seem like a good job. Yeah, I don't feel like there's any sort of pull to do that. It's really just about improving our own internal system.
Just briefly, can you talk about the most impossible thing on your list that you're going to do now?
One of the things that you learn when is that right. As soon as you talk about it, the whole world knows about it, and then it gets more difficult. So I'm keeping it a secret. But you can ask me like at a bar, and I might tell you. Okay. Not while there's a camera on me.
I've got 2 questions. I'm Florian. The first question is, can you maybe talk a bit about your background, like your family, because you're saying that it's a community and it's kind of an unusual thing how this community developed. And the other question is, I like your film very much, and apart from all the story aspects, I was wondering how you did the animals. Maybe you can talk about that.
Sure. My family background is my parents are both folklorists, which I don't know if that word makes sense, but essentially they run a nonprofit cultural organization in New York City that does a million different things, but they are trying to it's embarrassing because the film is so clearly it's so clearly that I'm my parents' son when I do it. They work to sort of document and preserve places, so that are important to communities. So like a community garden that's going to get turned into a bank, they landmark that and they fight to keep that thing alive. They go and try to save Coney Island roller coasters that are going to be demolished and turned into condos, and then also do things like they've like done projects on freak shows, and sideshow barkers, and sort of documenting and celebrating those types of people. And so certainly, that kind of informs a lot of what the film is sort of looking for, the kind of notion that great art isn't necessarily what a museum has deemed to be the most important thing. It can be just the guy who tells the best jokes at your dinner table, like that's poetry, And so I think that informed a lot of the types of stories we're telling and the approach that we have of doing things as a community. Probably comes from like going to birthday parties at the Coney Island Freak Show and that kind of thing when I was a kid. The aurochs. The aurochs are the way that we approach that, and this is sort of a good example of how we go into things. A lot of times it's more important to me the way that something gets made than it is what it is or what it looks like or the story. So I went to one of the other directors in the collective is this guy Ray Tintori who's a director of his own right, and I basically told him, we have these creatures. In the original script, Hush Puppy was jumping on top of them, and somebody got eaten by one, and it was like, there was a lot more that happened in that side of the thing. But I said, I don't want to use any digital technology to create this. I want these effects need to be organic, and I want them to have a heartbeat. Like I want to shoot real animals. Because that's so much of who Hush Puppy is she relates to animals. And so that was basically all I told him, and then what we settled on eventually after trying a number of different things is that we had to raise baby pigs from infancy and train them from 2 weeks old to wear costumes. And so we had this girl that was raising about 5 pigs, nursing them with a baby bottle, and putting costume, they'd wear a costume for 5 minutes at a time and then 20 minutes at a time. And, and then we started training them to see what we could teach them to do. And basically I got a call one day that was like, okay, all the pigs can do is they can run on a treadmill, they can stop, they can turn around, they can sit down, and they can eat, and that's it. And so you take that information and you cut all those scenes about them eating people and Hush Puppy jumping on them, and you design a character where each scene is based on one trick that we could train them to do. But that was more important. It wasn't like the aurochs aren't an intrinsic part of the story. The story is about Hush Puppy and her father, and the aurochs are a projection of her fear, and they're tangential. So this is a great thing in the labs. It's like it's not important what the aurochs do. It's much more important that they feel like they emerge organically from her consciousness. And so, I'm really happy that we stuck to our guns there and made them real, because they have this personality. And at the end of the film, one of the things that I love about it, when you have that 15-foot animal facing down this little girl, it's actually 2 children. That's a baby that you're looking at, that animal, and it has in its eyes this very innocent, childlike quality. And so I feel like you feel that parallel between them intrinsically, because you just know, like, these are a couple of lost children, and I just feel like those intangible things are worth more than, if you were to CGI that creature and it could growl and you would see its teeth and all that shit, that would be cool, but that's just not what's important in this film. So.
Oh, yes, I have the micro, if it's okay. You mentioned, hi, my name is Philip, I'm sorry. You mentioned John Cassavetes before, which I think is one of the most inspiring persons in the film industry. And I really think that his movies were so extremely real, like Gina Davis. I will never forget, like in the last play, like this one close-up. Yeah, it's like, Roland, yeah, sorry. And, excuse me. And he was, he came from the theater, Mm-hmm. So for you as a filmmaker who likes him, what is your relation to theater? Because I really think he's fantastic. It's so real what the people do on screen, It's no acting, which makes it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it is acting though. It's just a better form of acting
Yeah.
than you've ever seen before. You know, I don't know. I don't have a big theater background. I did write a couple plays, but I've never directed theater. You know, I mean, I think what I love about him and what he talks about and what I try to think about, not just for acting, but for all these things. I mean, it relates to the pigs. Is like, especially when you learn how to make film, there's so much education that goes into learning how to fake things. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you trick someone into how do you take a piece of cardboard and make it look like a piece of wood? How do you take an actor that's not feeling something and trick someone into thinking they're feeling that? You know what I mean? That's a lot of what acting is. You know, you have this, you know, and he talks a lot about this, that you have this shorthand for emotion that exists where, you know, you just know in a movie when somebody, you know, does some like little gesture, it's like, oh, that they feel that. You know that, but they're not really feeling that. They're going through a series of gestures that symbolize emotions. And what he was doing, as I understand it, is he was actually generating the emotions. You know, they're actually feeling what the characters are feeling in the scene. They're not using a shorthand. They're trying to push themselves into that place of actually feeling something, which you have to do in theater because you don't have cuts. You know, you have to actually immerse yourself in the moment. And so that was what we tried to do, you know, with our actors. And we would, you know, I mean, he I'm sure was a much more articulate person than I was, and but you know, if we had an energetic scene, we would all, you know, we would get the camera ready, we'd get the shot ready, and then we would all just like pound on the table until we would work ourselves up into a frenzy, and then I would scream action, and everybody would forget their lines because they were freaking out so much, but you would get yourself into the actual state, you know, that the characters were in. And so, you know, that thing that he did, I is something that we tried to transfer to this film.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi. You said you co-wrote the score. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. When, at what stage of the filmmaking process you were thinking of the music, whether you used temp music during editing. I'd just love to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah, I wrote some songs for the film before I shot it, and none of them were used because I was completely off the mark on what the music should be. The score really got written during the edit. Like I was saying, you know, I would write music while the editor was editing, and I would go home at night and work on themes and stuff like that. And you know, where we really unlocked the score is in the original thing I was writing. I was writing themes that scored the movie objectively. So I was writing themes, a tension theme for a tense scene and a sad theme for a sad scene, and you know, it's kind of scoring the way that you would score, you know, a big adventure movie or something like that, which is what I wanted the score to feel like. But it took us a little while to figure out that the score needed to be this subjective thing that basically, you know, it needed to be like a broadcast station from Hush Puppy's head of what she's feeling at any given moment, and the way that she's reflecting on her story. You know, that's how you were going to understand, because the events aren't, like the events of the movie are not an adventure series of events. There's no Sheriff of Nottingham to kill or, you know, golden, you know, chalice to discover in any mountain or anything like that. There's not a plot in that way. The adventure comes from the way that she understands her own life as a kid, you know. And so, you know, scenes like when she's running with the fireworks, you know, if you just were to watch that, you'd think, oh my God, this girl's gonna blow up, this is horrible, this is a scary scene. But because she thinks it's so heroic that she's doing that, you score that with a heroic theme. And that was when the film really started to work. We did use a lot of temp music, and a lot of things were, you know, yeah, we used a lot of temp music, but I would try to be constantly replacing those things with, you know, with my own stuff. But certainly there's a few parts of the movie that I actually missed the temp music because it was so good, and we were never able to like quite capture how it was. But you know, but yeah, I know. I mean, the music is such an important piece of information in the film. It's really not like a normal movie where you can sort of use music as shading and sort of back up stuff. It really takes a lead role in the information that you're getting out of any given moment. So we really needed it to get the film to work on any level, and so I would score it as we went along, basically.
besides the incredible visuals, you also have an incredible sound design. How did you approach, I don't know, Skywalker? Was that something from the very beginning? Was it budgeted in pre-production, or once you had a log picture? I'm very curious about, I don't know, making that decision of having such a strong choice with Skywalker.
Yeah, that was like our adventure into the real world of like the film industry, which is super scary and great. But basically what happened is we got a post-production grant from the San Francisco Film Society, and you can only spend that money in San Francisco. And so we had this massive, you know, unlike any other part of the project, we had a massive budget to deal with our sound design that we could only do. And so going to Skywalker was actually the cheapest way to do our sound design, which is like the greatest situation you can possibly be in. But it was a totally different thing than we'd ever done before. You know, it was people that I didn't know, and like working in a place where people go home and stop working on the weekend. You know, like all that stuff was totally new to me. But it was an amazing. I mean, so much of the film relies on sound, and those guys are so brilliant, and they have so many tools at their disposal. You know, I mean, I mean, so many things in the movie. I mean, this was like a real issue always. It was like you have a film about a hurricane, and you don't have the ability to show a hurricane on any level. You know, so all we have is like some shots with like a little bit of rain and like some drippy ceilings, and it's all dark. You know, but you have to believe that this is an apocalyptic hurricane, and that only was possible because we had this amazing sound team that works on, you know. I mean, we would, you know, we have. One thing I made them promise me when I went to Skywalker was that we would put the sound of that T-Rex foot hitting the mud in Jurassic Park, that it would be in the movie somewhere. And so stuff like that is in there, where you can just go into the sound bank and sort of pull your favorite sound effect and stick it into your film. I mean, it's unreal what they do out there. So. But yeah, I mean, this film like never worked at all until the sound design was done. It was totally, no one understood it, no one could feel it. It was like, I mean, and beyond just like not understanding on an epic level, people didn't understand what was going on. So it's amazing what that part of the process did for the film. I mean, really every part had to be in place for this film to work, and it really only happened. We mixed until 2 days before Sundance. So basically we did this 48-hour session, and they put me on a plane. Someone put me on a plane, I don't know who, and then I woke up at Sundance and watched the film for the first time with the sound design in. So, and before that, it really wasn't working. So, yeah, sound, don't underestimate it. It's really, it's everything.
May I? I wanted to ask you, how do you feel after this success? You feel some, you know, some pressure for the next project, or you're out of this game? So.
No, I don't. I feel pressure when I watch John Cassavetes movies. You know, those make me feel intimidated, but not by beasts, you know. Like I mean, I don't know. I guess I always just feel like there's so much. You know, you put so much pressure on yourself. It doesn't really change that when other people are putting pressure on you. It's really an internal desire to make a better film. You know, and that would have existed whether or not anybody had watched this. So, I mean, I think the only thing that sort of feels that way is just what I was talking about being watched and having to make the film under scrutiny is going to be weird. It's going to be like someone watching you take a shower. But you know, it's just like the next challenge that we have to go through.
And we talked about a little bit about that today, but there is some. It's maybe also pressure or danger or something like that. To do this, you know, same subjects. So you are from New Orleans, and you made a short film about New Orleans, yes, and this is a feature film about New Orleans. And what do you think? Is it not dangerous to make next film about in New Orleans? you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
the same.
You're talking about like the perception of your career on the outside a little bit, you know, which I don't know. I just don't worry too much about that. I'm always trying to tell the story that I feel like there's really only one story that you're feeling at any given moment, and you can't really help what that is. So you just have to tell that thing that you feel most needs to come out of you, you know. And if people, whatever people say about you, it doesn't really matter, you know. It's I don't know what I guess I don't know what would be dangerous about it. It's just.
Yeah, because it's real. So it is. I know that it's idealistical. It is like I think also like you, and I think also it's you know, it's a bullshit thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's dangerous if you're a director for hire and you're looking for work, you know, and looking for people to offer you projects. I think that's a different thing because yeah, you can end up in a situation where you only get one type of script offered for you to direct. But if you're generating your own material, you're free from that. You can make whatever you want to. So I think if you're writing on your own, that really doesn't matter. It's just if you keep on directing other people's scripts that are all about, babes in prison, yeah, people might think I'm only going to give this guy the babes in prison scripts, and that might suck. But I think if you're generating your own material, you just need to think about what's the movie you want to make, you know, and you can do whatever you want.
I meant with the danger also another thing. It's the financial side, because I have the feeling that it could be a step that the people say, I don't give you money for the next New Orleans film. You know what I mean? It's for me also. I want nothing to do with that, but
right.
Maybe it's became real sometimes. Some step.
But I mean, that goes back to just like, we're going to make it whether or not anybody gives us money. You know, we'll just make it for $15 if we have to. You know, it's about, you want to have, to me, I want to have that mentality and never be waiting for the outside to give me their blessing to make the film I want to make. Just, if you don't give me money, that's your loss. Like, I'm going to make it anyway. So I just try to think that way.
Any more questions? Back there? Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to tell you congratulations on the way you make films and your film, which are both beautiful and very pure, you know. And I wish you all the best of luck for the future. Thanks. And I'm glad to hear that you won't be crushed by Hollywood. And I just have a very down-to-earth question altogether. You know, what's the budget of your movie?
It was 1.5 million.
Wow.
And it was an interesting, you know, because you get asked a lot about like, how did you raise the money? You know, for us it was this process of like our team that came on, our financiers, because they're a nonprofit, it was impossible for them to co-produce with anyone because you can't mix a for-profit and a nonprofit model together. And so the decision that we had to make when we went into business with them was, these guys are going to finance the entire film front to back, and whatever their limitation is an inflexible limitation, you know. And so we have this story that, you know, you could easily take these series of events and make a $60 million movie out of it. It's a question of taking that story and figuring out how to fit it inside of that budget. So it was never a challenge to raise that money. The challenge was trying to figure out how to rewrite the story to fit it inside of a smaller pair of pants than it ever should have worn. But you know, we think that if we had made the film, we've tried to do this now that we're, you know, to actually estimate what this would have cost if we had done it in the normal way, and we think it would have been about a $13 million film. You know, that was the challenge, was just squeezing that down and finding ways to tell the story that worked around things that were going to explode the budget. And you know, it's stuff like, you know, you can't be rigid when you're in that scenario. I mean, we got to a point in the script. We were sitting with the budget, and I was with my producers, and I wanted to shoot the film. I wanted to shoot the movie on film on 16. I thought it was really important, and we couldn't close the budget gap and we couldn't make the film. And they said, well, you know, here's what's costing us money. You know, and I looked at all that stuff and I saw that there were a vast majority of the film was at night, and it was costing us an enormous amount of money to rent lights and shoot at night all the time. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go through and I'm going to write out every single night scene, every exterior night scene. I'm going to cut and find a way to write it during the day, and that's going to get that budget down to where I can shoot on film. So it's things like that that I think are really important to know that it's not important whether or not a scene happens during the day or at night. You know, what's important is the content of that scene, and that shooting on film was going to do more for the movie than having those night scenes, and making those kind of choices is what kind of allowed us to make this thing feel so much bigger than what we had.
When you said the finances, they are non-profit, so like the whole revenues, who will get them? The reason why I'm asking is because if you get them, this might be a possibility to finance your next movie, or, you know, like within your collective.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever see a dime from this film, which I knew going into it. I knew that even if it was a massive hit, that wasn't gonna get back to me. The way that we set up the film, people got paid so little on this movie is that we basically gave away the entire back end to the crew. So I think they'll get paid long before I do, if anybody sees any money. But the way that it works for Cinereach is basically, you know, they can make money, but they can't profit. You know, so they get their money back and they get some percentage over it, but then they cycle any money over that. They cycle back into other projects that they finance. So it's actually a really beautiful thing where other people's movies will get financed from the profits of this film, which I love. And for us, you know, we'll never see any money from this movie, but because of how well it's doing, you know, we are gonna probably have a much more, you know, have a much bigger budget to make the next film, and we're gonna be able to, you know, eat and drink while we're making it, which, you know, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but you know, we'll sort of see. We're going to get to make our next movie. That's the payoff. Is that we're going to get to make our next movie. We're going to get to bring our own crew along. We're going to get to have it be as crazy as this film. Like that's all the stuff that we consider to be valuable, and that's sort of what we'll get out of it, rather than, you know, fancy cars and nice houses. So, yeah.
Back there.
One little question. I want to hear something more about your pre-production. How long did you have time for pre-production? Because I'm asking because of your production design and all the tests with this great things which I saw only the trailer, but because you spoke about the realness in the acting, but the production design, everything around have to be real also, look to be real also, and that's a huge target to the goal to get through, and because of the small budget, I can imagine it took much of time.
Well, we didn't have a lot of time with the full crew, but a lot of the people who are the key people on this were working long before there was any money flowing in, long before there was any official pre-production. We were down there living in this abandoned gas station with no electricity, already starting to work. You know, so a lot of work got done outside of the parameters of what you'd consider the shoot itself, but you know, I think we had official pre-production for about 2.5 months, which is still pretty long for a film like this. And you know, the way things were built was very immersive. I mean, my sister. I mean, the reason why my sister is like the main artist on the film, and so she was working as long as I was working. You know, which was way before anybody else got there. And the way that she would build things is, you know, Wink's house that you see, well, you haven't seen it yet, but, you know, Wink lives in this tree house built out of junk in the movie. And she went back into the woods, found this abandoned school bus, thought, Wink would probably build his house on top of this bus, and then she just literally moved back there with all of her animals and stayed there, built her own house all out of trash that she found in the woods and junk that she found around, and built herself a house. So that was where she lived through production, and and that's how you create that same quality. I mean, it's funny because I would have fights with her where I would tell her, we're never going to shoot that side of the set. You don't need to spend 3 weeks, chiseling the rust to the point that you like it. And she would tell me to fuck off and say, this is my house. I can't have half a house. I'm going to have a whole house. And she's convinced. I mean, she was right, because it's amazing. Because, another great thing that it allowed is you put these actors inside these sets, and they're not sets. They don't have... There's a roof on the set. It's not like you're walking into a 3-wall thing with lights everywhere. You're walking into an actual place, and it allows the actors to inhabit that space completely naturally, so we can light 360 degrees. If they decide they want to open a drawer, there's going to be something in it that they can use, because it's my sister's drawers, and she's going to have scissors in there or something, and they can take them out, and it allows them to be very natural in those spaces, and also it allowed us, because those sets were being built for so long, we were able to rehearse inside of them, which was really important as well, just to, because Wink and Hush Puppy, the two actors that play that are nothing like those characters. They're, very, very clean. They don't, they live in urban areas. They don't live at all in that situation. And so, I would send them for a week every day. I would send them back to my sister's house, and they would just hang out back there. I wouldn't tell them what to do. They would just have to sit there all day and play with the animals and have fun. And it was a way in which they really learned those characters too. So building things in that super realistic way really helped the actors, and it helped the sets as well. And yeah, it was based on having a pretty long amount of time for pre-production. I, of course, when I do this again, I want twice as much, though. It was really crazy, because I really feel like pre-production is, that's where you get a chance to think and really sort of sculpt, and then production is just a race. So, yeah.
The same question for your work with your DOP. Did you how you developed everything? With storyboarded everything, or you thought about it after your rehearsings with your characters, or on the set? How flexible you were?
The DP was very different situation. We actually had a lot of trouble because we had certain positions that we were trying to hire professionals in because we were afraid, and that was one of them. But we actually could not find a professional DP that was willing to shoot this film because the plan was so insane and the resources were so little that we had 3 different people drop out who we offered the job to, and then we ended up giving the job to one of my good friends who I've known for years, who was going to be the miniature photographer on the film, and he convinced me to let him take a shot at shooting the entire film. So that process was very rushed, and it came down to much more, improvisation on set, and really having principles about how he was gonna. I almost directed the DP like he was an actor. It was much more about you are a documentarian in this world, and you don't know what's going to happen in the scene, and you only have these 2 lenses. I wouldn't let him use. I gave him a 50 and a 25, and we weren't allowed to use anything else. And he had to react to what was going on, or pretend to react to it. So it was about deciding the camera height, which was going to be almost always at her level. Deciding that we weren't going to shoot a lot of wide shots because, when you're a kid, you're focused into a more small world, and shooting on these long lenses that give you only a very thin focus to work with, and walking the world, being handheld the way that she is, and then just never knowing what's going to happen. So we were very disciplined about it, even though we were blowing things up at times. You have your pyrotechnics team. You can only blow something up once because it's built of real stuff. You can't replace it. We were still always disciplined about the fact that the cameraman did not know that explosion was going to happen before it did. So, he would just be there, and then we'd cue the explosion, and he would miss it, and he would get there a second late. But that was the theory behind his his character in the movie was that he was struggling to capture the world, and so it came down to those principles more than it came down to kind of we did storyboard the film, but we threw it out because the storyboards just became, when you're shooting with water and children and boats, like you just can't possibly get what you have imagined in your head. You have to throw that shit out. So it came down to being disciplined about a series of principles more than like an exact science of what the shots were going to be.
Sorry, but it's a bit difficult to understand if you if you work like not like that, but only for the understanding. How the DOP managed the lighting and the focus if he didn't know what will happen in the scene?
No. So he had to pretend not to know. It was a performance. You know what I mean? Like he was an actor. So we would, of course, focus mark everything, plan out the shots before the actors got there. Everything was very, very choreographed, and all that timing was worked out. But it was about a performance. It's like you have to. It's like when you're an actor, you have to listen. You can't say your line until the person says their line, and you have to react to it naturally. So it was about him performing as if he didn't know what was going to happen next, while at the same time planning it to a point of precision as well.
I think we have to stop here because we were already 15 minutes late or so. But thank you very much. That was very much.
Thank you,
Benh Zeitlin.